This is Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It's hour number 3 of Cashing Out right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We're going to be doing a little bit of everything here in this hour. We're going to be taking a little bit of a look at the NHL and the NBA playoffs. We've got some NASCAR coming up in 15 minutes. Nick Giffen, he does a tremendous job over at Action Network. He's going to be joining me. We're going to be taking a look at what we're all getting on the track this weekend, some of his early season takeaways from what we've been seeing on the NASCAR circuit in general. And then we have to take a look at some Sunday baseball, as we've actually got 16 games on the card for this Sunday, as we've got that double dip between the Metropolitans and the St. Louis Cardinals. So we've got a lot to be able to dissect there, and it's going to be a very fun hour. And we are hoping that it's going to be as good as what we saw on Saturday, because what we saw on Saturday was just absolutely tremendous in general. As on Saturday, you had yourself, obviously, the Kentucky Derby, with having one of the short shops being able to get the job done, as you were able to have Sovereignty be able to outlast Journalism, which those are always some fun names that you get with those horses to be able to get the job done at 3-1. I know that, once again, Mike Somich, who does such great work here at the network, I know that he was all over this one, so have to give a lot of credit where it is due for him. But in my opinion, really the biggest thing that we did see on Saturday was that incredible comeback between the Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. Avalanche up 2-0 about midway through the third period against the Stars, and then you had a Mikko Rantanen hat trick in the final 13 minutes of the third period. The Stars win by a count of 4-2, so they actually covered the puck line if you took that as well, -1.5. I know that our good friend who does the show before myself in terms of live bet Saturday, he was able to get in -1.5 on the Stars at a +350, and he was rewarded very handsomely for that. And now the Dallas Stars, they're going to be waiting to see who they're going to be taking on between the Blues and the Winnipeg Jets, and that's going to be an interesting game number 7. Now, personally, I don't really have too much with regards to this Blues versus Jets game, but I know that what Scott was saying is also what one of our previous guests, Dave Sherapan, was talking about 30 or so minutes ago. If you're taking a look at the under in this matchup, as you're finding about 50-50 split between 5s and 5.5s with regards to market, it's going to be juiced one way or another based on whether you get a 5 or a 5.5. Instead of perhaps taking a look at a full game under, perhaps take a look at the first period, just because I think that it was a very good point that Dave brought up last hour when it comes to that empty net. That could be very, very fickle, and if a team is down 2 goals, let's say that's a 3-1 game or something like that, there's 2 to 3 minutes remaining, they're oftentimes going to pull the goalie, and that either A, means that they get a really good opportunity to score down 2 goals, or B, they give up an empty net goal. And when you give up the empty net goals, it turns into some frivolous behaviors, to say the least, and things can go very, very harebrained. So I always think that that's interesting to take a look at. And for the Winnipeg Jets, Connor Hellebuck, he is looking to avenge, shall we say, some of the demons of the past, not just in the postseason, but we recall what happened at the Four Nations event this season as well. So there's going to be a lot there, and this is going to be a fun one, with the Jets currently find themselves as -155 favorites. If you're looking in the NFL and you found the Jets at a -155 favorite in a big game, I would certainly recommend against it. In the NHL, a little bit less so, but I do think that there is some credence to that as well. So we've got a lot to dive in on there. And then in terms of the NBA front and what we saw on Saturday as well, it was the Nuggets all over the Clippers by a count of 120-101. And again, I know that the Clippers analytics in the final month and a half, 2 months of the regular season in the NBA were pretty rock solid, but it just feels like it's deja vu all over again. The definition of insanity is looking at the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. I feel like that's this way with the Clippers, and if the Clippers keep this relative core intact, I mean, who knows that Kawhi Leonard is actually going to be healthy, unlike this season. For Kawhi Leonard, he just year in and year out seems to always get banged up at the world's worst times. James Harden, we saw the shell of himself that he was in this game number 7. He had 7 points in this game. You just need a lot more out of him, and that's been the MO for James Harden. It feels like he always puts up really good performances in the front half of the series, and then in the back half of the series, he becomes Casper the Friendly Ghost. So not good, to say the least, for them. And we are going to be getting a Game 7 on Sunday, by the way, between the Warriors and the Rockets. And this is one that I'm not going to have too much of a pregame bet on, but as I was alluding to, this is going to be one where I'm going to be taking a look at a live bet. I was able to do this in game number 1 with the Warriors when they were about even money on the close on the road against the Rockets. They get down by 8 points. I'm able to find a plus 165 on the money line, boom, they are able to make a run. That was a no-sweat winner at plus money rather than being able to get even money, and I do think that that's a good way of being able to take a look at things in the NBA. And again, you don't have to force a bet if you don't see what you like in terms of the live betting front in the NBA, but being able to gauge that, you're able to get more often than not much better bang for your buck in terms of those numbers. Like, let's say that you're wanting to take a look at the plus 2.5 with the Warriors right now before the game. If they get down like 10 points early on, which it's the NBA, any team could get down 10 points. I always like to say, when you take a bet in the NBA on a team, you're probably going to find that team to be up or down by 15 points, most likely both in the same half. That's just the way that these NBA games go, but I do think that that's a good way of being able to slice through it, as this is Cashing Out with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And if you want to be sharp, you want to go to the Sharp Plays, because they do a tremendous job of being able to provide a place where real bettors go to get ahead. Most of the betting world, it is just noise. You'd want to stop chasing steam, copying picks, and recycling the same old value plays, because they're not sharp, they're just parrots, and they are echoing what the Sharp Plays has been doing ever since 2011, as it has been locked and loaded with real pros and what their action is, where the sharp money is actually adding, and the kind of bets that actually move the market. When the Sharp Plays jump on a line, typically the line reacts every single time, and it's got great insider information, powerful AI tools, so that way you're not guessing, you're getting ahead. You're able to sign up for free reports, real-time alerts, and so much more on the old Twitter/X, along with email. And just don't take their word for it. Check out the receipts. You've got full betting logs that are live up there on the site. Visit thesharplays.com. Respected, watched, and feared. That is the Sharp Plays, as this is Cashing Out with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson. And how about if we do take a look at some baseball action as well, as we do have all 30 teams in action on this Sunday, and this is a game that I have yet to broach, but we have to do so right about now, because the LA Angels, they did not have their bullpen completely collapse on Saturday, so someone has to give them a round of applause. The Angels actually did it. I think that an Angel deserves its wings for the Angels bullpen not pooping all over themselves like they did on Friday night, when they gave up 2 home runs to Riley Green in the same 9th inning, which that was just hilarious. If you, like me, had the Tigers in that game, that was interesting to say the least. And right now you are getting quite a large plus number on the LA Angels in this game. This is 927, 928 on the board, as it is Reese Olson going up against Jack Conowitz. And right now for the Angels, you're finding them between plus 145 to plus 150 underdogs, right around about minus 165, minus 175 is that number on Detroit. And your total on this game is 8.5. If you're looking to lay the run line of the Detroit Tigers, you're going to be finding that more around even money. And if I could be able to get closer to like a minus 110 or so in terms of the Angels, I would be looking to get a run half. Right now, the loan value I'm seeing is a plus 150 or higher with the Angels, but I would much rather have a run line at more like a minus 110 or something like that, rather than a big giant money line, because I just alluded to it. This is an Angels bullpen that is just absolutely deplorable. 6.60 bullpen ERA entering into the night on Saturday. I mean, every single one of these guys is just lighting games on fire left, right, and sideways. You've had Kenley Jansen be, well, not clutch in the world's biggest clutch situations. You've got Ryan Zephyrian, who's honestly been relatively okay for the team, but Reed Detmers, it's just every single night with that guy, he's been giving something away. Like, it's hard to believe that this guy threw a no-hitter once upon a time in his career. And the Detroit Tigers, they are one of the best bullpens that you're going to find in all of baseball. As for the Detroit Tigers, dating back to the All-Star break of the 2024 season, top 3 team with regards to bullpen ERA. You've got so many guys that you're able to make some match with in the bullpen now. One of their main multi-inning guys, Brent Herter, he did go in the game on Saturday, so most likely going to be unavailable for this one. And you've had a few injuries that have popped up for the Detroit Tigers team, but overall, it is still one of the best bullpens that you're going to find in the big leagues, as you've had so many guys like a Brendan Hennefy, Tyler Holton, Tommy Kahnle, Will Vest, all be able to step up. Bo Brisky, I know, is dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's back in the fold for the team. And for the Detroit Tigers, this is an offense that has been, just for lack of a better term, reborn, and they've been able to graduate, as they're dealing with a few injuries. Matt Vierling being on the injured list, that's something that you do want to be mindful of, but Spencer Torkelson, 8+ home runs. He's been able to give you north of 325 on base. That Gleyber Torres pickup I thought was relatively solid as well. Zach McKinstry's moved the line, giving you north of 4 on base, so absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table. And on the flip side, you've got yourself a Angels team that they're very much all or nothing. Going into the day on Saturday, they were number 2 in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis at home, but now you're dealing with the Mike Trout injury, which, I mean, contrary to popular belief, Mike Trout wasn't having the world's greatest season. I recognize that he was hitting for a bunch of homers, but this was a guy that was also hitting below the mid-nose line of 200, so that was a little bit rough for them. Nolan Schoenall has been able to move the line a little bit, but you do have these guys like a Ore Soler, you're able to throw in there Kyron Paris, Logan O'Hoppe, who'll be able to give you 5+ home runs this season, but really, other than O'Hoppe, none of these guys are doing a tremendous job of being able to find a way on base, move the line. Luis Renifo had himself a pretty nice year last year, and that has not been the case thus far this season. Joe Adell, he is setting fire to the rain, and he's setting fire to your bankroll in the way that he is not able to hit at the plate, so that's been a little bit rough. It's a very interesting circumstance because with Reese Olson, he's not like an amazing strikeout guy, but he's solid. He's giving you about 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, has been a guy that's been posting up a mid-3s ERA, a mid-3s fielding independent, so I do think that he gives up a few here. I did set my total at an 8.8, especially with Jack Conowitz for his career, getting about 4 strikeouts per 9 innings, a career ERA that's north of a 6. That's not tremendous. And now he's starting to give up walks. Like, this is a guy that's getting no strikeouts whatsoever. He gives up 1.7 home runs per 9 innings, and he gives up quite a few walks. Now, I just can't bring myself to laying this big of a number on the Detroit Tigers, but at the same time, I was alluding to, I would rather take getting a run half with the Angels rather than taking that plus money line, because you just don't know with this bullpen, and they are going to fail you at the absolute most inopportune of times. So hopefully we can get more like a minus 110 on getting a run half with the Angels. That's where I'm looking right now, so I'm in a little bit of wait and see mode. And with regards to total with the Angels bullpen, and under is never safe. So we're going to be taking a look at the over in that spot, and I'm going to be taking a look at hopefully an Angels run line. And what we're going to be taking a look at next is a little bit of action on the track. Nick Giffen, he does a tremendous job over at Action Network. We've got ourselves a lot that is going to be happening in NASCAR this weekend. We're going to chat about it with him next, right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here on Cashing. Great to be joined by this man on the Progressive Guest Line, as we've got Nick Giffen aboard. He does a tremendous job over at Action Network, taking a look at all things NASCAR. I know that he, much like myself when it's in season, does a tremendous job on the college basketball front as well. And Nick, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to kind of one of the classic tracks of NASCAR, 1.5 miles at Texas Motor Speedway.
Absolutely. And before we dive in on anything with regards to this race, just take the people through Texas Motor Speedway and sort of the, shall we say, quirks that this track has as opposed to many of the other tracks.
Yeah, so, a lot of people think all 1.5 mile NASCAR tracks are the same, but they really aren't. Texas Motor Speedway is a great example of that. It was repaved and reconfigured around 2016, 2017. So its track surface compared to the other 1.5 mile tracks is much newer, which means it's less abrasive. So tires don't wear as quickly. And when that happens, it becomes much harder to pass. In addition, Texas is kind of just a one groove track. So it's really, really, really hard to pass. So Texas becomes the king of strategy and track position. If you're out front, you're probably going to stay out front unless you make a mistake. So look for teams and drivers to kind of strategically position themselves towards the front so they can hold on to it for the last run to the checkered flag there.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because the short shots, they're much of the guys that you're going to be finding up front. Kyle Larson, he's right now the short shot over at DraftKings. He's at plus 350. He qualified number 4 for this. William Byron, he's at plus $5. He qualified number 2. Carson Hochevar, he is currently the guy that is going to be leading the way in terms of this as well. He's a little bit further down the board, but how do you take a look at what we're all going to be getting with regards to this track in general? Because you just mentioned it. It's very hard to pass, and it almost feels a little bit more like Formula One. In that Formula One, as we know in that sort of racing series, that's where the track position becomes key.
Yeah, with track position king, it actually makes it a little bit harder to bet on some of these favorites if they aren't already going to be out front. So Kyle Larson, right, he starts not in the first position or the second position. He starts in the second row there in the 4th position. And his teammate William Byron, as you mentioned, those are the 2 favorites. Byron starts second. So they should rightly be the favorites. But the problem is, if another driver or another team kind of just gets a lucky timed caution, they can find themselves out front and they can just hold off Larson or Byron because it is so hard to pass here. So I find it very difficult to bet on the favorites this weekend at Texas. Byron and Larson are 1-2 in my model, but I only have them around 12% to win. So, you probably need them at least 6 or 7 to 1 at minimum to feel comfortable betting on them as a favorite here.
Absolutely. And is there anyone a little bit further down the board that you are going to be taking a look at? Because I was mentioning Hochevar a second ago. He's right around about 25 to 1. And I do think that that's very intriguing because he was able to win all the heats and everything like that, but yet he's so far down the odds board.
Yeah, exactly. He's sitting there potentially even at 30 to 1 at some books, which is right around fair with my model. The issue here with Carson Hocevar is he's on a smaller team and he's only a second-year driver. So while he's immensely talented, he's a little bit prone to mistakes, and just the team overall, Spire Motorsports, as a smaller team, tends not to have as quick pit stops. And if you're losing time on pit road, you're losing that track position and losing the ability to be out front, where at a track where it's hard to pass, that's a little bit difficult. So if you want somebody a little bit further down the odds board that I'm looking at, you mentioned William Byron, you mentioned Kyle Larson. What about their teammate, Alex Bowman? He is sitting there starting in the 11th position. Hendrick Motorsports always has great pit stops, and Alex Bowman also has been very good at the 1.5 mile tracks this year. If we look at practice speeds, Alex Bowman actually ranks 6th in my practice metric, where I take every lap, every driver, lap by lap, and compare them to each other. Alex Bowman looks like the 6th best driver, and we're getting him as long as 22 to 1. So I don't mind a flyer on him. I have him about 6.5 to 7% to win.
And this one I thought to be very intriguing. And as we know, with regards to NASCAR, a lot of these more like matchups, the derivative markets, those come out a little bit closer to the AM. So there's a lot of places they don't have a ton of that up. But Tyler Reddick is actually the number 3 shot at plus $7. And he qualified number 17. How do you take a look at a situation like that? Because we were just talking about it, how positioning is so key in this matchup, or in this race. And with him being number 17 in terms of positioning and him being number 3 on the odds board, it does feel a little bit confusing.
Yeah, well, the good thing is there's 400 miles, right? And we have 3 stages, and every stage NASCAR is going to throw a caution, and we'll have pit stops between the stages, as well as probably pit stops during the stages. So there's multiple opportunities for Tyler Reddick's pit crew to make up some of that ground just on pit road. And this is a fantastic track for Tyler Reddick. He has one of the 3 wins here at Texas in the next gen era, which started in 2022 with this new car. And he's been in the top, drivers in terms of fastest laps of the race here at Texas in those 3 races, in 2 out of the 3 races. And he ranks 3rd in my practice metric, ahead of Kyle Larson, ahead of William Byron. So I think in a long enough race, he can make his way towards the front. So while I'm maybe not betting him outright to win, DraftKings earlier was hanging earlier in the week, and if they come back out with these markets, maybe Tyler Reddick to have the fastest lap of the race or the most fastest laps of the race, I would look at betting him in those markets.
I think that that's a very good look, and that's something that I want to dive in on a little bit further. Is Nick Giffen. He does a tremendous job over at Action Network, taking a look at everything NASCAR. He is joining me right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And what sort of derivative markets are you going to be taking a look at for this race? Because you just mentioned fastest lap with regards to Tyler Reddick as being one that you're going to be spotlighting. I know that typically you're able to get some nice matchup props, and a lot of those are very much TBD. Those will be coming out a little bit closer to the AM. But what are these sort of things that you are going to be taking a look at? Because as we know, much like we find in golf, while you're able to get a lot of value in terms of the outrights, top 5s, top 10s, they can certainly make you a good penny as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the common manufacturer or markets I look at is the manufacturer market. So the driver to finish as the top Chevy, or the driver to finish as the top Toyota, or the top Ford. And as we're looking at it here, the Ford market looks really interesting because I do think Ryan Blaney is going to end up being a pretty heavy favorite in the top Ford market. And what that's going to do is it's going to make some of these other Ford drivers a little bit longer odds than they should be. And let's start with the driver that is the farthest starting Ford toward the front, Austin Cindric, who starts in that 3rd position. Austin Cindric was actually number 1 in my overall practice metric. He had the fastest 10-lap average in practice, 15-lap, 20, 25-lap averages in practice. So I think if we're going to look at some of these manufacturer markets, when they drop, look for Austin Cindric as the top forward. If you can get him like 6-1 or longer, my model is showing tremendous value on that. And similarly, over on the Toyota side of things, Ty Gibbs starts 6 and was number 2 in my practice metric. And Ty Gibbs in that Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota, right? Racing for his grandfather there, old Joe Gibbs. I think Ty Gibbs is going to have a fast pit crew as well. He has the track position starting in 6th, the furthest Toyota towards the front. And again, was second fastest in my practice metrics.
Yep, and I think that it is so interesting to be able to take a look at all this. And is there a driver out there that maybe they're a little bit further down the board? Maybe they're a guy that is not getting a lot of love that you think might be able to provide a little bit of value just based on the way that they've been racing this year. And maybe you've had to adjust to them a little bit here in the NASCAR season that has been going on for about 2.5, 3 or so months.
Yeah, I got a couple drivers you could maybe look at as something like a top 10 bet. Certainly not outrights, but Noah Gragson and Michael McDowell, I think, are two guys that could sneak into the top 10. They're around 4.5 to 1, both of them. And I'm showing value on both of them in my model. Just starting with Noah Gragson, right? He starts in the 18th position. But in terms of, again, that practice metric that I keep, depending on how you weigh the early laps versus the later laps, Gregson's anywhere from a 13th place to maybe even a 9th place car in practice numbers, which getting 4-1 on a top 10 bet for a car that's borderline top 10, I think is very, very good. And then Michael McDowell, he starts in the 5th position, so he has the track position now. He wasn't quite as quick as Noah Gragson in practice, but he was still in that 15 to 18 range, which at, 4.5 to 1, I think is pretty solid value given that he already has the track position starting in 5th place.
Absolutely. I think that that's so well said. And is this going to be a race where you're going to be interested in a lot of, shall we say, the matchups when they do come out? Or is this a little bit more of a race to be taking a little bit more at the derivative market and taking a little bit more of a look at outrights?
Yeah, I actually do think some matchups will be interesting here. There's one, I think, book out there that's come up with a matchup, and I did bet it there. But I think overall, as more books put out more matchups, that's going to be a really nice place to look. And some books even post stage matchups. So just the first stage of the race, which driver will finish ahead of the other driver in the first stage. If you can find something like that, there's very often solid value there. And given how important track position is, I think a stage 1 kind of bet in a matchup could be a very profitable venture.
And that is the evolution of sports betting. You're seeing it with first fives in baseball. You see it at the first period totals in the NHL. It's even lingering on into NASCAR as well. And Nick, you're the king of taking a look at everything out there on the track. Always do appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, and enjoy the race, everyone.
Absolutely. Nick does a great job breaking down all things NASCAR. And coming up next, how about if we go from the track to the diamond and take a look at some Sunday baseball right here on Cash It Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Cashing Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here on Cash It Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. It was great to be able to talk some NASCAR with Nick Giffen. He does a tremendous job on that front, and I am a firm believer. Money is money. It doesn't matter what sport you're betting on. It doesn't matter how big or small the matchup is, because a lot of my favorite bets when it comes to college basketball when that's in season, a lot of these like Southland, SWAC, MEAC games, because they cash the same as Duke versus North Carolina. Game out there in the MEAC cashes the same as the national title game. Granted, probably not going to be able to get down as much money on the MEAC game as you are in the national title game, but still, winners are winners, and Nick, he does a great job of being able to unearth those and so much more on the NASCAR front. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now let's take a look at some great baseball action that we're going to be getting on this Sunday, as we've been talking a lot about these National League games for Sunday. Haven't touched upon too much of the American League games, and this has been a fade that I've been taking quite a bit over the last 2 years, and it is back on like Donkey Kong, kids, and by that I mean we head out to the Bronx. 9:15, 9:16 on the card. The Rays hit the road. They're facing off against the New York Yankees with old Will Warren on the bump for the Yankees, and Taj, don't call him Milton Bradley, is on the bump for the Rays. Rays are sizable, plus 154 to plus 160 underdogs, and between minus 170 to minus 185, that number on the Yankees, with a total of 9, shaded down to the under end. There just always feels like there are those franchises that play another franchise very tough. I don't know what it is. The Rays always seem to give the Yankees trouble when they're out there in New York. Like, it doesn't matter who's pitching. It doesn't matter what the situation is. The Rays are just always that pesky team to the New York Yankees. Maybe I'm just saying this because they won the game on Saturday, and maybe it's just the games I remember from memory, but it just always feels that way. And for Taj Bradley, it's been a less than savory start to the season for him. A little bit north of a 4.5 ERA, and his strikeout numbers have dipped. First 2 seasons at the MLB level, 10 plus punchouts per 9 innings. This season, more like 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, so needs to get that going a little bit more. But for Will Warren, this guy, in my opinion, he's just not necessarily a guy that I want to be trusting in. He's looked better this year than he did last year. Like last year, this guy was a human pinata with the way that he was getting banged around, but he's still giving up 4.5 walks per 9 innings, and this is a Yankees bullpen, which the top end is very good. Like Luke Weaver has been rock solid, but they had to use up quite a few of their more trustworthy bullpen pieces, like Fernando Cruz had to throw for multiple innings on Saturday. You had to bring in there Ian Hamilton, who is a guy that I really like. I think that he's got some upside, and right now that less than trustworthy guy is Evan Williams, who's been less than savory since he arrived out there in New York. But I do think that for the Tampa Bay Rays, it's going to be interesting to see what this offense does moving forward, because they do appear to be improved this season, albeit that's just what's going to happen when you go from the Trop on over to George Steinbrenner Stadium. So they are very used to the ballpark dimensions out there in New York, because both of those ballparks have pretty much the same dimensions. But that said, you've got a guy in Jonathan Aranda who's done a nice job of moving the line for the team, and it's been really a constant for them this far this season, being able to hit just below 300, being able to give you 4+ home runs. Cameron Misner has been able to find a way on with about a 290 average, and really like what Junior Caminero is putting together for the team as well. 6+ homers, not necessarily the world's greatest average, but finding a way on base. And then for the New York Yankees, you've got the guy by the name of Aaron Judge, and he's slugged out 11 home runs with north of 500 on base this season. Just absolutely incredible. We are starting to see some guys think a little bit for the team. Anthony Volpe is a little bit banged up. Jazz Chisholm was not hitting for any average whatsoever, but the fact that he is out of the fold, that does take out a little bit of power. And Cody Bellinger's having himself a really bad year. Sitting right around about a 200 with not a lot of power, like what I've seen out of Ben Rice, but it feels like he's been fading over the last week or so. You've had Austin Wells not hit very well, as he's hitting about a 200 himself. And with the Tampa Bay Rays, you know that this team is going to be crafty with regards to their bullpen. Like, these guys have all been able to do a solid job coming in, holding down the fort. Edwin Uceta is good at being able to give you multiple innings. Hunter Biggie, Mason Montgomery, Pete Fairbanks, throwing their Garrett Clevenger. All these guys are able to do a rock solid job, give you a sub 3.5 ERA. And with the Tampa Bay Rays, I do think that Bradley is going to either match or exceed what you're going to get out of Will Warren. So being able to get this big of a plus number, I'm willing to dive in on that money line, set mine at a plus 127, and I'm actually going to take a shot on the under for Will Warren. He has been taken out of games very, very early, so he can't do as much collateral damage to your total as you'd probably like. So I'm going to be in on that total under, and I'm going to be taking a shot on the Rays on the money line. And something that you certainly want to take a shot on is 14 months of VSiN, because you're able to get a really nice discount on it. Typically, we sell 12 months here at VSiN for a grand total of $240. We're going to shave $41 off that total. That'll make it $199, and instead of 12 months, you're getting 14 months, and you get everything that we do here at VSiN. Email daily best bets from all of our VSiN shows and guests, exclusive betting splits from both DraftKings along with Circa, exclusive access to the VSiN Watch app that you're able to use 24/7, 365 on leap years, 366 days of the year, and you're going to be getting access to all of our upcoming betting guides. The NFL betting guide is always a banger. They're going to be working very hard on that. You're able to go to VSiN.com/subscribe to take advantage of the offer and type in the word PRO. That is PRO. That saves you $41, and that gets you an additional 2 months over at VSiN.com/subscribe. Promo code PRO. As it is Greg Oops Peterson holding it down right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And how about if we take a look at this game, as I do think that this is going to be a fun one out there in Texas, as typically things are bigger out there in Texas, except for the amount of overs that you've gotten this far this season. Well, I guess you could say that things have been bigger for the unders, as 23 unders to 10 overs thus far this season in Houston. Very wild and crazy, to say the least. This is 925, 926 on the card, and you've got the Rangers playing host to the Seattle Mariners, as one Mr. Jacob deGrom is on the bump for the Rangers, and Logan Evans, he goes for the Mariners. Mariners will find themselves as right around plus 150 to plus 155 or so underdogs. The total on this game is 8. If you're looking to lay a run half with the Texas Rangers, you're only getting about a plus 120. Right around plus 155 becomes my buy point on Seattle. I would like to see this get to maybe closer to plus 160. Hopefully people buy in on the name brand in general of Jacob deGrom, because he's just not quite the same guy that he has been in the past. Not that Jacob deGrom is some sort of scrub or anything like that. He still has a sub-3 ERA. He's still getting you about 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, but that's not Jacob deGrom. Like, deGrom has had 10-plus strikeouts in every one of his seasons since, I believe, the 2016 campaign. His walk numbers are still relatively solid, but has been giving up 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. His fielding independence is darn near a point higher than that ERA, and I mean, this is just a factory for the Seattle Mariners in the way that they're able to develop these good young arms, because you've had like Bryce Miller come through. Obviously, Logan Gilbert has been rock solid. George Kirby is going to be coming back sooner rather than later. You say woohoo to the fact that they were able to develop Brian Wu as well. And for Evans, first start at the big league level, pretty darn solid. Gave up 2 runs over the course of 5 innings, and I like this guy at the minor league level as well. He's not going to give out a lot of cheap walks or anything like that. He's been able to do a solid job of just being able to induce soft contact as well, even when he was pitching at the PCL level for Tacoma, which, once again, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and I'll mention it once again. If you're gauging these guys going from the minor league level to the major league level, always have an asterisk around PCL, Pacific Coast League numbers, because that is a place where the ball is absolutely flying. It is very, very hard to hold a below 5 ERA with regards to PCL, so I always find that to be very interesting to be able to gauge. But that said, I do think that for our good friend in Mr. Evans, he's going to be able to give a relatively solid performance against a Rangers lineup that it's not great, to say the least. This team entered in the weekend dead last in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. They are getting back Corey Seager. That should be able to help out the offense a little bit. And boy, oh boy, do they need it, because Wyatt Langford has been able to hit north of 250. He's been able to give the team 6+ home runs thus far this season. But you've had a lot of big, giant disappointments on this team, because you've got Marcus Semien, Jake Berger, Jock Peterson, all hitting below the Mendoza line of 200. Leody Taveras isn't necessarily giving you a ton. Josh Young has been okay at being a move line, but you're just expecting more out of Adolis Garcia. I mean, over the last 12 months, he's had a tough time of being able to reach base. His power numbers are not necessarily where you'd like them to be. And for the Texas Rangers bullpen, the bullpen is very meh, I think is the best way of being able to put it. Like, Hobie Milner, Sean Armstrong are actually relatively solid in that bullpen. Robert Garcia to this point has been relatively okay. I need to see more Robert Garcia before I can buy into Robert Garcia personally, though. And for the Seattle Mariners, you do have one of the best closers in the big leagues, and Andres Munoz, who's been able to do a nice job there. They're getting back Matt Brash as well. Matt Brash was a little bit of a failure of a starter a few seasons ago for Seattle, but when he's thrown innings out of the bullpen, he's been pretty rock solid. You've got the likes of a Gabe Spire, Colin Sider have stepped up for the team. Jordan Thornton has been a little bit less than savory along Taylor Cicado, but overall, I do take a look at the spot for the Seattle Mariners, and I think that you're going to get a good start out of our young gun pitcher in Logan Evans, especially with the fact that the Rangers have been about as offensive as Ned Flanders thus far this season. So, semi-total at 7.9, I'm going to be in on the under. And with the Mariners, if we can get just a little bit above a plus 155, we'll take a shot on their money line as well. And then this one, I think, is going to be an interesting one as well, as we've got the Red Sox playing us the Minnesota Twins. This is 9:19, 9:20 on the card, with old Garrett Crochet on the bum for Boston, and Chris Paddock, he goes for Minnesota. Mostly seeing 8s out there with regards to total, 1 or 2 straight 8.5, and with the Boston Red Sox, you're getting them as a Mondo -210 to a -225 favorite, right around plus 185 to plus 195 is that number on the Minnesota Twins. The Twins have been one of the biggest disappointments in baseball all season long. I do think that we're getting a little bit too far northward, though. Garrett Crochet, his strikeout numbers have been a little bit down from what they were a season ago. And Chris Paddock, to his credit, he's been much better in his last 4 starts. 2 runs or fewer allowed in each out of his last 4 starts. Now, you look at his last 3 starts, he has given up 3 homers and 4 total runs. That is very much fortunate on his part, but for the Minnesota Twins, does feel like they're getting a little bit healthier, even though Royce Lewis is still on the fold for the team. They've been able to activate a few guys off the injured list. Brooks Lee has been a nice addition for the team, and then with the Red Sox as well, you've got Alex Bregman, who's been firing all cylinders. Trevor Story has been able to give you a bit more as well, so it's an interesting circumstance. If I can get a plus 190 or higher, looking at that Twins money line, and I'm going to be in on that over. And to wrap up the show next, we take a look at all the bets I've got on this Sunday on Cash It Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here for the final segment of the night, right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. If you're listening live to Cashing Out, you know what? You're going to be getting a replay of this fine program. Meanwhile, if you're listening to the replay coming up 7 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern, you're going to be getting the VSiN Morning Line. Tim Murray and company doing an absolutely tremendous job on that front. And we've got you guys locked and loaded all day long on But it's going to be a tremendous Sunday as you've got a few Game 7s out there in both the NHL and the NBA. You've got yourself all 30 teams in Major League Baseball in the Diamond, 16 games in total because you've got that Mets versus Cardinals double dip as well, and we've got a lot to dive in on. So how about if we do have ourselves some good, clean family fun here? Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show, and this is going to be a game that I'm going to be looking to live bet. That is going to be the Game 7 that we've got between the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. Right now with the Rockets, pretty much across the board, a 2.5-point favorite. Total odds game is now rising. It's up to 204, and I think that that's very intriguing because personally, when I looked at those early games in Houston, they were very much underwhelming games. Now, you've got a Game 7 where we saw the Denver Nuggets and the LA Clippers have themselves an over on Saturday, but typically these games, they just tend to be a little bit slower, and it's a Golden State Warriors team that they just, for lack of a better term, know what the heck they're doing in a Game 7. All that experience, I think, is big. Now, where the experience counts for the Houston Rockets is the fact that Ime Udoka has been in big games going back to his time coaching up the Boston Celtics, so he's a guy that knows what he's doing. But many of these guys, seems like you're just they're veterans that they signed over the last 12, 24 months. A lot of these guys are very new to a situation like this, so I think that that's going to be playing a little bit of an X factor, and that's the big reason why I'm hoping to be able to get a relatively solid number on the Warriors live. Right now, you're able to find them at a plus 120 on the money line. I believe that if they fall down like 7-8 points early on in this game, you're able to find a nice buy point there. Just bank on them being the third quarter team that they have been for darn near a decade at this point, and with the way that I'm playing things right now, I do think that being able to get just as much value as seemingly possible on the Golden State Warriors live, whether that be on the money line, which I'm very much hoping for, like a plus $2 money line, if at all possible. I still remember in Game 1 when I bet them live when they were even money prior to the game. They get down 8 points. I was able to get a plus 165. If I can get something similar, I'd be very happy with that. And I do think that you're probably going to be able to find a little bit of value on the under. If I had to play this right now, I'd be looking there. But I do want to see if you see a little bit of like a harebrained start, something like that. A few shots that probably shouldn't fall, that do fall. Maybe get that up to more like a 210 slide way. You have just a little bit of wiggle room, as well as sometimes things get a little bit harebrained and crazy. So that's what I'm looking at on that front end. How about if we do take a look on the front of Major League Baseball, as well as that's a little bit more of my bread and butter sport. That's the sport that I do a podcast for right now here at the network called The Baseball Betting Show, which every single episode uploads at midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. So I've got you guys covered there. Just like G-Bank, they've got you guys covered with all of your transactions. Most credit cards treat sports book and gaming transactions as cash advances, even when you put your own money on the card. G-Bank, they treat these transactions as purchases, so you're saving up to 3 to 5% on the cash advance fees right there. Also, with your G-Bank card, you're earning 1% cashback rewards on all eligible sports and gaming transactions and 2% cashback rewards on all eligible purchases. Apply now over at vsin.com/gbank. That is vsin.com/gbank. And how about if we do dive in on the baseball front, and this is a game that I have yet to hit it, but I do find some value here. As the Kansas City Royals, well, they have not been getting a lot going on offense, but I actually do like this pitching matchup between they and Kyle Gibson of the Baltimore Orioles. Michael Lorenzen, he's going to be getting the start for Kansas City, and with the Baltimore Orioles, they're between minus 120 to minus 130 favorites, between plus 105 to plus 110, and total's 9.5. Now, I just have to throw this out here for giggles, just because I was looking at this game before, I was doing my research, doing the handicapping and everything like that, and there are just certain stats that you can't help but just sit there and laugh at, because Kyle Gibson, he made his first start of the season about a week or so ago against the New York Yankees. He became a human pinata in that game, and right now for Kyle Gibson, he is giving up 12.3 home runs per 9 innings. I don't think I've ever taken an under on a guy who's starting with 12.3 home runs given up per 9 innings. Like, that's pretty insane to say the least. His ERA is a 22.09. When your ERA is higher than the current year that is, you know that you're going the wrong way down a one-way street, fielding independent of a 21.33. It'll get a little bit better for Kyle Gibson. Last season when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals, he wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. 4.24 ERA, 4.42 fielding independent. This is one of those circumstances where you want to look a little bit further than the 22 ERA and be like, oh, he's going to give up 22 runs in this game or something like that. Though it is hilarious. Like, I have to say, just being able to read off the fact that he gave up 12.3 home runs per 9 innings, good, clean family fun there. And For Michael Lorenzen, he's over the last few seasons had a fielding independent that's been much higher than his ERA. This guy is just pulling off a few Houdini acts in the way that he's able to get out of some of these like first and second and third sort of jams. As he's been rock solid recently, 1 run or fewer allowed in 3 out of his last 5 starts. Overall, 3.48 ERA. Fielding independence more around a 4.10. As this by no means is some sort of strikeout artist. He's giving you about 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, only giving up about 1 home run per 9 innings. Hasn't been too bad on that front. The walks are a little bit alarming with 3.5 walks per 9 innings, but that's actually down from what we saw last season. But where I'm willing to bank on this team is the fact that with the Kansas City Royals, this has actually been a really good bullpen. I like the fact that they brought in Carlos Aceves during the offseason. A week or so ago, had a little bit of rough COVID against the Colorado Rockies, but he, along Lucas Hursadge, a really good 8th and 9th inning duo. Even some of these guys that are a little bit further down in the bullpen, like a Daniel Lynch, have been able to provide some relatively good innings. And I will say for the Baltimore Orioles, Ynier Cano, Felix Bautista, a really good 8th and 9th inning duo of their own. And Seranthony Dominguez, after last season was a little bit less than savory for him, he's been able to step it up as well. Gregory Soto is a guy that I want absolutely nothing to do with whatsoever. Gregory Soto, no thanks, I'm good. And for the Baltimore Orioles, it has been an up and down lineup, especially with all the injuries that have popped up. Right now, you got Jordan Westberg, Tyler O'Neill, Colton Cowser on the injured list. That's not tremendous for the team. Like what I'm seeing on Ryan O'Hearn, 5+ home runs, doing a solid job, giving you north of a 340 on base. Cedric Mullins is at darn near a 400 on base. He's finding a way to be able to pound out 6 home runs, but you need a bit more out of these guys like a Ryan Mountcastle, Adley Rushman. Both of these guys are hovering right around about a 200 with regards to their average. Gunnar Henderson starting to find it a little bit more, but that on base hasn't been there, hasn't necessarily been able to slug the ball at the yard thus far this season. And like Kansas City Royals, Vinny Pasquantino has been able to give you 4 home runs thus far this season, but I think that he and Bobby Witt Jr. are the only 2 guys on the roster that have been able to give you north of 3 bombs thus far this season. You do have a few guys that have been able to find a way to be able to get on base, as Freddie Fermin has been pressed into action with Salvador Perez, deal with a little bit of an injury, and Perez has had a little bit of a down year this year, so I do expect that to be able to get a little bit better. Drew Waters is finding a way to move the line after Hunter Renfroe. Well, he was replaced right field by him because he's on a big giant nothing burger thus far this season. Miguel Garcia is finding a way to be able to get on base as well, but I do think that in this one, you're going to be able to see a relatively okay start out of Michael Lorenzen. Kyle Gibson, I don't think is going to duplicate the 5 home runs that he gave up in less than 4 innings against the New York Yankees as well. So I did set myself at 8.6 here at the 9.5. I do like the under. And with the Royals, I set them as a slim favorite. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. This is, I think, a very interesting matchup as well, as we do have ourselves what is going to be going down in Milwaukee. I mentioned this one a little bit before, so we'll give you a bit of a re-rack here, as Brewers and Cubs are a relatively pick-em line, and this total is 7.5. I take a look at Freddie Peralta and Shota Imanaga, both having a fielding independent north of a full point higher than their ERA. I do think that there's going to be regression here. And for the Chicago Cubs, this has been a unit that has been number 1 in all of baseball in terms of runs per game. The 6 runs that they put up on Saturday, that's pretty much their norm. They're averaging between 6.2 and 6.3 runs per game. Again, for Imanaga, even though he's been able to do a good job of being able to keep teams off the board thus far this season, this is a gentleman that has been having his issues thus far this season in terms of the hard contact, as he's been allowing in the neighborhood about 1.6 home runs per 9 innings. That's a big reason why he's got a sub-3 ERA. Fielding independent, more around about a 4.7, so that's very glaring, and both of these teams have been in the bottom 10 with regards to their bullpen ERA as well, so a little bit alarming there. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over. The Brewers did make them a minus 116 favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. I know that our good friend who joined me in hour number 2, Dave Sharapan, he mentioned this game in passing, and I've yet to really give my full breakdown, so we'll wrap it up with this. The Padres on the road against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Andrew Heaney and the Pirates in a lot of places are right around a minus 106 or a minus 115 favorite. You're going to get right around minus 105 on the San Diego Padres with a total of 8.5. This is going to be the first start of the season for old Steven Kolek, and he was a relief pitcher for the Padres last season. Posted up an ERA of 5, but fielding independent was more around about a 3.5. Not necessarily going to get you a ton of swings and misses, but keeps the ball in the yard. And for Andrew Heaney, a relatively good start to the season for him. Andrew Heaney seems to fail you at the worst time, and this is a Padres bullpen with David Bednar, who I really don't trust in. Colin Holderman has been doing anything but holding down the fort for the team, and the Padres sub 180 bullpen ERA. Even if you don't get a good start out of Tyler Kolek, I do believe that bullpen going to bail you out. I do like the under, and I do like the money line here of the San Diego Padres, as I did set them as a favorite. And what is my favorite? Everything that we've got here at VSiN. It starts with the weekend morning line at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. Tim Murray always does a great job there. Mike Somich, Matt Brown, they do a great job with Ready, Set, Bet. That'll be coming up in the afternoon. And then you've got a live bet Sunday, and you'll be catching myself with a little bit of a guest appearance with Scott Seidenberg on that show. And that's all coming up right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.